Good day and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be working on a 24 joule Illinois Bunn Special pocket watch. I made previous videos on the disassembly and cleaning. This video is specifically addressing cleaning the jewels on the upper and lower plate of the pocket watch. The jewels have very delicate gold settings, 24 karat gold settings. This is a very, very high-end pocket watch. So I'm taking the utmost care to make sure that I do not scratch these gold settings on the top of this pocket watch. So I've got to be very, very careful. I'm also using my stereo microscope, my DSZ-70 stereo microscope, to do some work here. And I also have included within this video some close-ups with the DSZ-70 stereo microscope. And as you can see down here, I've got the two plates that are ready to be worked on. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me some comments. And as you can see, I haven't shaved in a while, but I'm wearing my beautiful Bulova Marine Star watch with my beautiful strap that is mesh. So please enjoy the video and comment. The next video coming up will be the reassembly and test of this pocket watch. And if you have any comments or suggestions, let me know. But I think the technique I'm using is the best technique for doing this. Thank you. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and you can reach me at jdwatchservice@gmail.com. That's jdwatchservice@gmail.com if you're interested in me doing any work, any servicing work on your watch or your pocket watches. I'm more interested in doing work on pocket watches, but I do some watch service. Oh my God, I said do. So the challenge today is to remove the cap jewels from the movement, and to do it very carefully without scratching any of the gold on the top of the movement. So this is scary stuff, as I like to call it. But the technique I use here, see if I can flip glasses for a second, and I use these ones here, as you can see in the top there, with the loop that comes over. But the technique I've got here is, as you can see, I've got a cap jewel off right now. So I removed the two screws. They're here on the mat away from me. I removed the two screws, and then I go on both sides of that cap jewel, and it's in a setting, right, a gold setting. So I'm not sure how many carats, but it's in a gold setting. So I remove the two jewels, and then I take my smallest screwdrivers and I wedge them in on both sides, and ever so slightly move it up until that cap jewel comes out. The other technique I could use is flip this around the other way and get some pegwood and then punch the jewel out, right? But I don't want to use that because there's I just don't want to use it. This jewel inside here would have to travel all the way through the shaft here, and it's all doable. If I had to replace this jewel, I'd do that, but I just need to get access to the jewel from the top to actually clean it. And I'll use pegwood to clean that jewel out. All this has already been washed in lighter fluid, so it should be fairly clean except on the outside of the jewel hole, and definitely getting the old oil off the cap. So that's the trick. And as I look at the cap, let me just turn this around for a second. See if I can lift this up with these tweezers. They need to be a little more wide. Stretch them out a bit. I can turn that over with a piece of Rodico. Just to punch that down a bit with a piece of Rodico, and then look at the other side. Yeah, and I just need to examine the other side of this jewel, and I'll see that there's dried out, very dried out oil on there. So I just need to clean that up and reapply the oil, and do that to all four of these. I don't need to do it to the center because it's got a cap on it. It doesn't have a cap on it. This jewel here does not have a cap on it either. So this is, if you count your wheels, you've got 1, which is a mainspring, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So this would be the escapement likely, and then this, and then I believe so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4. This would be the center, the intermediate, third wheel, fourth wheel, fifth wheel. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, just removing that. I believe this is the escapement. Yeah, it should be. Anyway, so I'm saying anyway a lot. Anyway, so so successful. I'll take this jewel under my stereo microscope and have a very close look at it and make sure it's all cleaned up properly. So it takes a bit of time. I've got a needle here that I use to wedge in normally, but it's not thin enough to get in there. So I noticed. So I just use the technique that I showed you. So I'm going to clean that up and I'll be back. Okay, here you have a close-up under the microscope of the cap jewel, and as you can see, there's leftover gum on the top of it. You can see a little bit of it on the top there, and so I'll just clean that gum off. I'll use some lighter fluid and then some pegwood to finalize that, just to get the grease away from it, and then I'll drop a little bit of oil on the top of that, and it should be good to go. I'll look at and see what this little, let me point on the other side of the pegwood here, this little piece of whatever, what is that? Don't know. Usually you can clean up the jewel here with the pegwood, but as you can see when I smear it, like that, and then poke it with some Rodico, that should clean it up nicely. But I may use some alcohol here to get it in a bit of a better condition. Not sure if I've focused in nicely on this or not, but let me just move that around for a second. There we go, and there we go. So I'm just going to clean that up, and I'll be back in a second to put just a little slight bit of oil on the top of that. I flipped the cap jewel over to look at the other side, and as you can see, although it looks kind of nice and clean, when you look at the watch, there's a boatload of scratches on that gold setting from years of something, or perhaps when they manufactured the gold setting, the scratches were there already. Don't know, right? And I think there's a little nick in the top of that jewel as well. So it's just taking the Rodico here and pushing it down onto the cap is cleaning that up nicely. So I've got very little of anything on that jewel right now. So that's cleaned up nicely. And that little black spot you're seeing there is actually from the other side. It's not on that cap jewel. So, and what I do too is I look at the shine of the jewel. So when I look at the shine, I can see if there's anything at all on that jewel left, right? Any dirt, oil, or whatever. And right now it's very, very clean. So that's the cap jewel. And so let's apply a little bit of oil to it. Okay, in this situation here, I take the oil and I pull the oil out really slow, so I get the smallest little bit of oil on there, and then just touch the top of the cap jewel, just like that. So you don't want to apply too much oil, but that should do. That's just a small spot of oil on top of that jewel. Now, in order to lift that jewel up, I have to actually get a different pair of tweezers here. So I've got a older pair of tweezers that are much wider, and you can see the tips of those. There's some strange little twist in that tip, but it shouldn't make a difference. So I can pick that cap jewel up just like that to replace it. Now I'm looking at the setting that the jewel is in, or was in, and I can see that there in the setting there's just a little bit of leftover oil in that setting, and I can peg that out from the top to make sure that that jewel hole is nice and clean. So I just peg it out like this with pegwood and that'll get rid of that, and then I can take my Rodico again and push that Rodico down on the on that jewel hole to clean out anything that's in there. And like I said before, I washed this with lighter fluid before, but if you look at what we got now, that's beautiful. So, and there was like a few little tiny flakes of pegwood on there, and that just removed that nicely. So, and just go around the setting like this to make sure there's nothing left over. So that leaves me with a spanky clean jewel setting like that. So it's a thing of beauty. All right, I'm going to apply a little oil to the top, to the cap jewel, and just a bit of oil on the cap jewel. Like that. You don't want to over oil it, just put a spot of it on there. And now I'm going to flip that cap jewel around. This is really tough because I'm using a microscope and I've got a camera on one end and I'm trying to do it without screwing this up. Flip that cap jewel around and then put it into the setting and just lower it into the setting. And I may have to move the movement just a bit here to line that dot up, but let's try to see if I can do that. All right, I think I got it in nicely. And then what I'll do is replace the screws on that. Just tuck that in like that and nudge it over. Now I don't want to scratch the top of that setting, so I'll use a piece of pegwood. And I've got everything nicely aligned here, maybe just a little bit over more. So just move that over just a tiny bit. It's a world of nudging is what it is. There we go. So that's absolutely perfect. I can press down on the top with the pegwood because it'll fit right over the top of the setting. And push on both sides and make sure it's nicely down, and it is. And you can see how nicely that's aligned up. And there's a little piece of there's a little bit of oil in the center there. So that's that. I'm going to get away from this microscope for a second so I can put those screws back, and then I'll just do the exact same procedure for all four jewels on the top plate. Alrighty then. Now we've got to throw those screws back into the onto the plate, and I've got two screws here, and got two pairs of tweezers here. One of these tweezers is wide enough to make sure that setting goes into place, and the other pair is actually dainty enough to deal with the screws. So I don't want to use the wrong ones for the wrong purpose. So you grab another screwdriver here and see if this one works better. And you're putting these back in. Make sure you're not threading the plate the wrong way. And you don't really need to press that hard on this because it's these are just holding the cap down. I'm using my fingernail here to push down on this a little bit. There we go. It's settled into place there. It was a little bit up. And then just back it off a bit and then turn it again. That's perfect. So grab the right pair of tweezers. Oh my god. Oh my god. and just grab the screw, which is now upside down. I think I'm shaky again this morning because I just had my coffee. Never have a coffee and do watch repair. Again, make sure the threads are good here and not going outside. There we go. So that's 1 jewel. So I'm not going to videotape doing all the rest of these, but they're effectively done the exact same way. So I'm just going to circle my way around and try to remember which ones I did last. This one doesn't have a cap on it, so I only have 2 more to do, which is nice. But again, like I said before, the technique is to use those screwdrivers to lift it up like watch hands on both sides. When you're removing the screws from these this movement here, you want to make sure that, like I said, you have to have a very firm grip, not press down too hard, but just enough to grip it, and then I just sort of nudge with my hand with like ultimate strength here. I just sort of nudge it over to make sure that it's indeed out, and then pick that up with Rodico if it's possible. There we go. You can also twist the Rodico too to just unscrew the last threads, and I just drop it on the mat here. And I also try to remember which side it's on when I'm doing that. So now, as I said before, to take that very nice gold movement, or the setting out. You don't want to be jamming stuff in there and twisting it and scratching stuff and all that. So what you do is you approach it from both sides and just inside of where the screw holes are, and then you should be able to just lift it out or pop it out nice and easy. So I'm going to try to do that here. See if I can get enough of a grip on it. And it's going up, but I'm not scratching the movement. It's just letting go from the side. So I need to play with it for a bit to get it out. And they're tricky. Just be very, very patient with it, and don't let the watch win. You gotta let yourself win. So you just twist this and try to. There we go. Kind of have it here. There we go. And I get it out far enough, and no need to play with it. Just grab it with the Rodico. There, I just pushed it back in again. Not too smart, but there we go. So I popped it out. So that's how you do it. And then I'll clean that up like I did before under the microscope. Again, safety, safety, safety. So that's the best way of getting these cap jewels with the very nice gold settings out of the watch. So I figured we could record some of this stuff and then just make it fast motion so you can see what's going on, which won't take much more time, but I can do a times 10 on it. So if it's 10 minutes, it looks like it's done in 1 minute. So, but it's very detailed work, and it takes plenty of concentration to do this. And you don't want to do anything like screw up the screws or screw up the I want to make sure I get the screw out without having any problems here. So let me just grab my black screwdriver here. There we go. It's out. It's tricky. It's also jumped out. Nice. Put that over on the side, and then get everything out of the way, and then grab the next one. Hopefully I'm still in focus. and kung fu that one out. There we go. Just grab that. Good morning, Vietnam. And then I will try to pop this out like I did the last ones under camera, which is like not easy. Not easy when you're being watched. I've heard other watchmakers who make videos state the exact same thing. It's a trying to flip this out nicely. Come on, you can do it. Oop, there we go. It went fling, but that's fine. No harm there at all. What I didn't want to do is put the screwdrivers near the plate at all. So I don't want to scratch anything. So having it pop up is not a problem. And then just to clean that, I looked at cleaning it on the mat, and it's actually, I can do it on the mat, which is nice. And I use like I said, I use a piece of pegwood. And when I get down on this, get down dirty on it, and I'm able, let me just refocus here for a sec. There we go. And I'm able to go on top here of that pegwood, or of that jewel, and just rub off the leftovers with the pegwood. And then, like so, and then I very carefully press down on the jewel with the Rodico very nicely, like that, and then scrape off anything. And then I look at it at an angle, like I said before. Just pop it up and look at it at an angle, and that is absolutely clean. If I can get a close-up of that, maybe I will, just so you can see how clean that is. Alright, there's the close-up of the jewel, of the cap jewel, and I'll just show you here if I move it at an angle. See if I can get a shine on it. There we go, look at that. So that is absolutely clean. It's impeccably clean. It's like a mirror finish. So that technique works exceptionally. Move it over here into the light maybe. There we go, look at that. That is super, super duper clean. So anyway, let me get back to where it's supposed to be and continue. Alright, same technique for this this jewel. And I'll take the pegwood first and just very carefully round off the jewel with the pegwood to get any leftover oil out of there. And then I'll peg out the center like that, which gets rid of anything around the edges of that jewel. And then I need to go in there with the Rodico, and I go in with the Rodico, and I just clean piece of Rodico here, and just press that down a bit like that, and then sharpen my Rodico on the end, and then scrape it like that. And once I'm finished that jewel is completely cleaned. And remember, I cleaned the other side of that jewel when I put the whole thing in lighter fluid previously. So this jewel will go on top like that. So I want to line up how that actually sits in there. And there's just the smallest little notch on the edge of that jewel, which tells me that it's going to go in this direction, like this, like that. It's going to set in the setting like that. So when I oil it, see if I can flip this around. These tweezers are maybe a little bit too wide because they're making it very difficult to flip around. And then put some oil on it, oil it very carefully. I've oiled a few now, so I oiled the last one, but I got to clean off my oiler a bit. And put the oiler into the solution here like that, and then just touch the top So, and don't talk to anybody while you're doing it, because you'll get too much oil on there. Too much oil is never good, so that oil will stay there. Now I got to flip this around without screwing it up. See if I can do that. Alright, so grab this. Like I said, the tweezers are a bit too big for this. The only good thing about these tweezers is they're bent on the end and they kind of grab the thing a little bit better that way. So we'll put that back into the setting. Like that. I got to do some nudging. It's nudge time. So I want to nudge that in properly. It ended up nudging the wrong way. I don't want the center of that to be compromised because I spent a long time putting oil on it. There, I think that's good there. Now let's see if I can press this thing down. There we go. Fell in there nicely. And just make sure there's no, it's not raised up any at all, because you don't want it raised up at all, because the pivot for the wheel sits in there nicely, and there's no, you don't want too much end shake, which is the there's end shake, which is the top of the pivot shaking way too much. The gap between the top of the pivot and the cap jewel could be too high, and that's going to cause too much end shake, and so you don't want that. And side shake is actually the talking and trying to put a micro screw in. Side shake is when the pivot and the jewel itself, the jewel hole, and there's too much rattling inside there, which is side shake. You want a little bit, but not a lot. And so you really have to be careful when you put that cap jewel back on, that you're not creating too much end shake, which allow the gear to go up and down within the movement. So you don't want that. That's on the not so good books. And I'm going to make this video before I reassemble the watch, because I think it'll be a cool video. Cool for watch nerds. Maybe not so cool for non-watch nerds. So, and I still have to remove the center one too. So, where the escapement goes, and do the exact same thing with that. So for the actual balance staff, this is the lower. Is it lower or upper? It's actually the lower pivot of the balance staff, which is kind of odd. But in these old movements, that was that lower pivot dropped into the hole here, and then so you have all of your jewels for that upper and one lower all on the same side here, and so made it really kind of interesting. So of course, I'm not sure if they have engineers designing this back in the day, but I'm sure they had interesting people doing it. So now I got to remove this cap, which I'm hoping just comes up. Yeah, I see a little bit of motion in there, which is always a good thing, right? If you just sort of wedge it and you can see just the slightest bit of motion, then you got a chance of removing it. Or else you got to punch the whole thing out, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to work on this for a while. I don't care if it pops up, like I said before. It doesn't bother me, as long as I can get it out. Just hoping it pops up. Come on, pop. So I think I'll just turn the video camera off for a second and work on this. I'm working against gravity too, which is no good. You see I'm twisting it and it's coming out, which is nice, but I want it to come out faster. Flip my screwdrivers around, Kung Fu Panda, and approach it from the other side here. Maybe this screwdriver will work better on this side and the other one will work better on the other side. Geez, it's twisting, which means it should just twist out. I'll turn my video off so you guys don't have to watch this. Alright, there's a little bugger sitting on the top. So I did twist it out nicely. And this one also has a little mark on it, and I can see, I think, the slightest little mark on the top right here. So I got to make sure that that goes back in the same way. And if I twist that around again, and I'll clean the top of that, and I'll pegwood that out nicely. I can see there's a little bit of, hit my head on the camera, but there's just a tiniest bit of dried out oil on there, and dried out oil in here. And I'll peg out the bottom of this hole here just a bit. Clean that up a little. Get my Ratico again, same as I did before. Start off by just pushing it down once, and then I scrape the Ratico against the jewel itself. And that, my friends, removes every little piece of oil that's ever been on that jewel. Completely removed. And then I gotta sharpen up my Ratico. I actually look at this really close so I can make sure that the oil has been removed, right? Because I don't want to have done all this work, and at the end of the day I haven't done a perfect job. That jewel just popped up just a bit, so I just want to put that setting back in place, make sure that's in place. Because if it's not, I could create another problem. There we go. So that's done. And all I need to do now is oil this little bugger and then flip it in. And I just want to make sure it's on the right side. Like that. Okay. So let me just put some oil on it before I screw this up. I'm finding it hard to turn these tweezers around with one hand because they're too wide. So I'm losing the grip on it. But it's my lucky guitar fingernails. They're good for doing watch repair stuff. So again, you pull the oiler out really slow to get the smallest amount of oil on it. And then just right down in the center, like that, leaving the very small dot of oil on that. Any more than that, and it could ride down the staff or the shaft, and then cause me all kinds of other issues. Get all this stuff out of the way. I'm going to try to turn this around without screwing it up, because I can normally do this no problem, but is that where the notch is? Yeah, there's the notch. So I just want to align this as good as I can. And then I can tweak it once I get it close. There we go. That's perfect. That's tweaked. And then take your piece of pegwood like this and push down on that. That's perfect. And if you can see, I don't know if you can see that. You probably can't see that, but there's a little tiny notch right there, and there's a little tiny leftover notch on this here. Now, I'm not sure if that was a notch used for taking a needle and lifting up the movement, or just an alignment notch, so you could align this back exactly back where it was before. I think it's an alignment notch because it's not big enough to be able to be used to actually pick it up. So I think it's simply for making sure that the cap jewel is going in with the setting in the right place. So that was a failure. And I know this, when you're into the micro work here, it can get frustrating, so I'm trying to make sure I get the screw in the right direction. I'm not using my my very nice Horatech portable watchmaker's thingamajiggy right now, watchmaker's bench. I know I'm going to screw this up again. I think I need a bigger pair of screwdriver, and a bigger screwdriver. And I could use the Horatech so I'm not hunched over so much. But I didn't realize at the time how much detail this work would be. Just make sure that screw is in the right place so you don't strip anything when you put it in. You screw it down and tighten it just a bit. Don't over tighten those screws, because if you over tighten those screws you could easily strip the threads on them. So it's not too hard to strip a thread on a screw. These are micro screws, and it depends what material is harder, and in this case I think this is probably nickel, which would mean that the screw as steel is stronger. So the inside threads on the plate would be what's stripped, and then you've got to re-tap that hole, and it's sort of a micro re-tapping, and that ain't easy. And when I work on this, it's really careful that you don't compromise the banking pins at all, and leave the banking pins exactly the way they were. They were set probably by the factory, so they were precision set. And there's techniques for actually doing the adjusting the banking pins, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But there you go, beautifully done. All these jewels on the upper plate of the watch now are all done. They're mint condition. I can take some Rotocode and just do this to the top of them, but probably not necessary. But I'm looking at it and every setting is flush, which is good. So have a very close look at the settings to make sure they're all flush and you have no issues. And it looks like I've got success. So I got to do the same sort of thing with the bottom plate. This is where the face is. And these things, I don't think these are actual settings. I think these are fake settings, because they didn't really need to put any settings on the inside. But I'll have a look at that, and I'll do the exact same job on these and complete that, and then we're good. But I won't bother videotaping all that because I can bore the crap out of you. So thanks for watching, and let's just continue with this cleaning and reassembly. Okay, as you can see on the face side, or I guess it's the upper side. I call it the lower side, but it's the lower when you're a watchmaker. But the face side of the movement, as you can see, there's a hole here. So that hole is pushing out these jewels. So this jewel here, and this is a cap jewel for it. So I removed the two screws from the jewel, flipped it around, and just pushed it out with a piece of pegwood. So it's dead easy. That's not too hard to do, and so I can clean these jewels up again. And I've got to do that with this here, this one here, and this one here as well. And this one here does not look like it has a cap on it at all, but I'll complete these ones as well. It's not too bad. And as you can see, there is a little lip right around, and that lip on this particular is the cap part, and I think my tweezers are just a bit too big for this. So there's the lip, as you can see on this jewel. So flip that around, put it back in when it's done, and then oil the cap, put that back in, and good to go. So that's how that is done. Right, a little bit of up close oiling here. So I'll put the oiler in nice and slow, and then just a dot on the top here. I have to actually make sure there's a dot on the top. There we go. So that is 100% officially oiled. And I've cleaned these two off and ready to go back home. Alright, recording's a little bit dark here, but I had no choice. So the first one in is the one with the ridge, and it faces this way, so it goes down into the hole of destiny. And let me see if that's in right. I got to look at that. I think it flipped around on me. Yeah, there it did. So it goes in like that. And then this one goes in on top. So I don't want to push down on that with my pegwood, because if I do that, it'll spread the oil, and that just screws everything up. So again, I try to make that as close to the original position as possible by just nudging it around. That looks really good there. So, and then I flatten it out with the pegwood, so it's going to go right over the top like that. And that should go straight down. Let me look at my pegwood, make sure that's okay, and I'm going to push that straight down. There we go, look at that. Fits perfect. And again, the hole is on this side, right? So the jewel is on that side. And just make sure, push down the edges so you can make sure it's perfectly aligned before you put the screws back in. And get a little oil on this, I think, so making it more difficult to put the screws in. Drop those in the hole, get your screwdriver, and I think you can see in the upper camera how close I am, but and again, like I said before, don't over torque the screw on there, because it'll take the threads off the plate, and you don't want that to happen, because years from now this watch will be taken apart again and maintained, and the next guy will say, who the hell was the watchmaker who did the last one? I know I've said that a few times as I've worked on various watches, because it's like, oh my god, some guy really screwed this up. So let me just show you how this is done here. So I unscrew this very carefully. I put a lot of pressure on the screw, but I don't really press down that hard. So there's one screw, and then the other one, like so. And I'm just going to pick it up with the Rodico just so I'll make sure it comes out like that. I can flip that over and make sure I got the right one. 1, 2 is near the post. Near the post, it's this one here. So it's that one right there, like that, I believe, because I already did this one. I'm going to focus a bit here, so you get a nice clean picture. There we go. Now, and just, you got to absolutely make sure. So I'm going to turn it over again. Yeah, make positive, absolute certainty that it's the right one. And then I should be able to push this right out. So piece of Rodico, or sorry, the pegwood fits right over there perfectly. And I just push straight down like that. And then the jewel falls right out. So there's the jewel, and there's the cap. So this is the jewel itself. and there's the cap for it. So it's a strange configuration actually, because the cap looks like it's not a cap. So, and then again, I will take these and clean them up. So I figured I'd videotape the last screw going in of the last setting being cleaned. So I showed you how they pop out, and if you're very careful, but the top ones are a little trickier because you've got to grab them from both sides and lift the setting up. I don't recommend popping the top ones out like that, although I think you could do that, but I don't recommend it. So having fun here putting that screw back in. There we go. So I got my head resting on the camera. And again, don't over tighten these screws, they're not going to go anywhere. So there we go. That's the plate done. That's all of these done and oiled, done and dusted, as they say, and oiled. So the watch is in impeccable condition. I think I'll just peg this hole out too, just to, can't remember whether I did this one yet, but peg that out and then put a little bit of Rodico on there, and when I reassemble the watch, I'll be oiling this one from the top. It's this one here, and it'll be oiled from the top. Yeah, because it doesn't have a takes just a little tiny bit of oil. But there we go. So that's the plate done. So that's it.